Welcome to the Pinelander Podcast, the official podcast of Pineland, broadcasting to you from an undisclosed location deep inside Pineland, where we discuss faith, family, finances, firearms, freedom, food, and everything else in between, with those who believe in living free and living out the values that made this country free. Welcome to the Pinelander Podcast. My name is Paul LaFavor. I'm here with my ranger buddy, Mike Blackburn, and today is Friday, the 22nd of July, 2022. This is a podcast for America's Warriors. And as you know, if you didn't know, we like to talk about events that are really important to the family. And so we love and support God's idea of the family, the nuclear family. And so we have back on to podcast for a second time, Rodney McDaniel. We're pleased to have him. He's going to be talking about that and some other things, but I think this will be very exciting. This will be also maybe a way to kind of take stock of ourselves and maybe plot a way forward so that we can maybe do a better job as fathers.
Rodney, what are we talking about today?
Hey guys, great to be back. Great to be back. Thank you for inviting me back to the base camp. Yeah. So, hey, a lot going on since last we spoke, and man, I appreciate you guys once again. I appreciate you inviting me back. I just had a real burden, since the last conversation that we've had, talking about fatherhood and all the things that in society that really are indicators of of a hole or a gap that that may need to be filled, and I've just really been on my heart and on my mind since the last time we spoke. So so I figured maybe if we could kind of expand or continue that conversation, I think it would be great for us, be great for the listeners, and try to figure out a pathway to what's next.
Yeah, there's certainly a void out there, and for me, I was raised by a single mother.
Same, Mike. Exact same. Yeah.
So to me, this is kind of like a big issue anyway. And for those out there that were also reared by single women, you know what I'm talking about. It is a difficult job parenting with two energetic parents. Okay, when you all of a sudden take on parenting as a single parent, that's very hard because you're also the breadwinner and you're taking care of all the other issues. I mean, you're basically having to be both sexes, okay, and provide what each sex provides those children. And I could see my mother struggling a lot, okay. And if it wasn't for male role models in my life, I'd probably be in jail right now. I mean, I'm just going to tell you that I had a lot of strong male role models in my life. To this day, I think about them every single day. Bud Lane, if you're out there, of course, he passed away, but Bud Lane, you have no idea what kind of a difference you made in my life. I just want to say thank you wherever you are right now. But we need to talk about this because what I see in society is a lot of young men like me, raised by single women that didn't have a Bud Lane, that don't have a Bud Lane in their life.
Mike, I'm glad you mentioned that because that was one of the things I really wished, I really failed to say previously when we spoke, and that is, I want to give big props to my mom for what she did and the influences she had in my life, and she absolutely did the best that she could, which was a fantastic job, by the way, and really kept the train on the tracks is the way I would say that. So I should give her a lot of credit for the man I became and the father that I was able to be to my kids. And my wife and I both came from single parent families, so we beat the odds. I mean, we celebrated our 33rd wedding anniversary recently. The month of July is our birthing month. Both our kids were were born in the month of July. So yeah, I mean, big hats off to moms. And talking about fatherhood, this is something that's just, you're talking about the single family, the single parent family. So which country leads the world in single parent families?
Absolutely.
Out of 245 nations. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, and Rodney, I had some stats on that too. I want to just share that with you guys. I know from the 1960s and 1990s, the percentage of children living apart from their biological father was 36%. And it had been 17% in the 50s. And today it's estimated that half of all American children live without their fathers. Half. So 17% from the 50s, 36% after, the crazy 60s and all that stuff. And then now, it's half. And so that's the question is, what effect has that had?
So here it is. So, so here's some stats for you. So 85% of all behavioral disorders are from fatherless homes. 70% of all addiction recovery teens, 70% addiction recovery teens, fatherless homes. 75% of all rapes are committed by men from a fatherless home. 90% of all homeless and runaways are from a fatherless home. A person that grows up in a fatherless home is 5 times more likely to live in poverty. 70% of all high school dropouts are from fatherless homes, and 65% of teen suicides come from homes where there is no father.
Right. Now, I mean, I don't want to, use this so much, but it has of late. We've seen a lot of this high profile, attacks, mass shootings. And we had the young man, 22-year-old in, Illinois on the 4th of July, schwacking people. Case in point, this guy fit the T and had a lot of other blocks that he checked. But the big block he checked is no biological father reeling him in, giving him pointers, life lessons. Here's the left and right limit of your life. None of those things. Yeah. And it's, and so we have, what do we have? We have, I mean, you said it, pandemonium. We have, manners.
Well,
I mean, just look at lack of respect for authority, lack of good work ethic. Things that just drive me nuts, I'll be honest, is people just don't have the work ethic that when I was that age, I was like, hey, you said sir, and you replied. And when you go through the drive-thru, they don't just say, yeah, sorry. Maybe that's here. Maybe that's just here where we're at. I don't know. But yeah, that's my whole point is look at the tremendous impact. And the world says, our culture says fathers don't matter. We used to have father knows best. And now the father is just some other kid that they laugh at, right? But that is the key integral part of the nuclear family is a father, and is it any wonder the trouble we're in? Just to kind of complicate the obvious.
Yeah, and Paul, that's a good. So this is a good talking point. A couple of years ago, a good buddy of mine who happens to be a local pastor. We grew up together. We did a lot of wild things together as teenagers. I went into the military. Obviously, he went into to seminary, and we were having a conversation. Just so happens, my dad, who left when I was probably 7 years old, left us when I was 7, and his dad knew one another very well. I mean, they were drinking buddies. They were pool hall buddies. So, the presence of a dad obviously is real important. But one of the things that we were talking about, and I thought was so dynamic, was he said, Rodney, he said, your dad was absent and not there. My dad was present but absent. So I think there's also there's the absentee father, the guy who runs away, and then there's the guy who's there presently physically, but has checked out.
Yeah.
And so in our conversation here, we were talking about which is worse. Is it worse to have a father who's physically there but absolutely checked out and ignoring kids, ignoring their kids and isn't participating whatsoever? He's a businessman, fisherman, hunting guy who also has a family.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that's like his part-time gig. When I have to, I will kind of situation. So I think it's important to acknowledge that too. Is that even in some families, the dad may be present physically, but may be absent. Yeah, absent mentally.
Yeah, it's more than just showing up. I mean, you
right.
gotta,
Yeah.
it's like, it takes more than, biological, accoutrements
Yeah,
to be
Sure.
be a father. You have to show up, and more than just showing up. You have to care. You have to, yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's just like when we've all served in the military, and when we're young, we're always looking at our leadership, and there's things that we like and there's things that we don't like, and as we progress, we try to emulate those aspects that we really liked in our leaders, and of course the same thing is true as men, as young boys. We're primarily looking at our father for how to handle situations, and when things came up, how did he handle it? Did he get mad? Did he get angry? Was he cool under pressure? How did he handle this instance and that instance? I mean, we emulate behavior that we see. So that's the really challenge too, is for a lot of these young dads, I think, especially myself, not having, growing up without, I had male role models, obviously, but I didn't have a father figure. So a lot of it I had to really, it was a lot like the military, really. I was emulating what I considered good male examples, good male role models. And that was important for me. And it still is. I still try to think about how so-and-so would have handled something, whether it be a football coach, a teacher, a neighbor, whatever. But father,
Mike, for me, it was life changing. I mean, that was, going into the military changed my life. I mean, I think I would either be in jail or dead by now if it hadn't have been for men who
that structure,
who gave me a good, that structure. Yeah. It gave me a good example.
Right and wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, accountability. And just absolutely. So,
hey, if I could nuance our talking points here, I think that one thing that's negatively has been, the poison in this cauldron we're talking about. This big problem is just the attack on biblical, or just an attack on masculinity. Just an attack on that, a sustained attack. And if you go back and remember, and probably in the 80s and 90s, when I was saying, where Father Knows Best is kind of phased out for the father who is funny and is not really the guy that has the answer anymore. He's not the Leave It to Beaver's dad.
I think there's clearly, I think you have to recognize the fact that there's clearly an assault on fathers.
Yeah.
I think there's clearly an assault on the family, on the traditional family. Almost every ad that you see today almost, shows dad as a buffoon. A lot of the sitcoms are that way. So there's certainly an assault on it. That doesn't, I still think, you have to rise to the challenge, recognize it for what it is, but you do have some competing messaging going on, don't you, Rodney?
Yeah, that brings up a really good point. What's taught versus what is called, and the influence that young men and women, but in this particular context of this conversation, particularly young men, are not seeing good role models. They're not catching that either in public, public situations, and definitely not on mainstream media, social media, like you said, sitcoms. I mean, it's almost like dads are made fun of, it's the running joke, right?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's sad but true. Yes.
Well, it's funny,
Yeah.
Paul and I went to a Jordan Peterson event here not too long ago. But when you talk to Jordan, or when you listen to Jordan Peterson, one of the things that amazed him was the fact that it was young men that really were interested in his videos or the YouTube videos that he would have and his events. It was just full of young men, and
And he's been criticized for it.
well, he
Yeah.
didn't realize though. I mean, he honestly didn't realize. But what he had done is he was filling a void that was there. The young men needed to hear what he was saying because they weren't hearing it anywhere
Yeah,
else.
he wasn't catering specifically to males. No. But that was the guys he resonated with them.
Yeah.
So and absolutely, he fills a void. I think it's important that we note that we're under attack. Masculinity is under attack. Being a father is under attack. At least the biblical explanation of being a father and being a male is under attack. It's a demonic attack. I think that's important to say that because we can't put demons under our microscope, and scientists, at least worldly scientists, laugh at him. But it's true.
Yeah.
We need to recognize that
And
fighting
listen, we're not whining about it, okay? But it's just important to understand what is.
We're at war.
Yeah, it is.
You want to be a real dad, you have to fight for it.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
The whole world's against you.
No one's going to hand it to you.
You got, as they say, the world, the flesh, and the devil are working against you to prevent you from, living the best you can to be a father.
And it's okay. Bring it on. I mean, whatever.
Well, and in this electronic age, I mean, I think, from my vantage point, it appears to be getting tougher and tougher because there's so many things, coming at our kids, and the society is shifting. The kind of the way we talk about things. One of the terms that just drives me crazy is biological male. It's like, I'm not going to go there. I mean, I'm just not. So, but kids are getting fed this stuff, constantly, and they're getting beat up.
Yeah.
Comparing themselves, their insides to somebody else's outsides. And you know what, really, guys, I think at the end of the day, they just need somebody to believe in them and encourage them. And I think that's a big part of it, is just somebody to lift them up, to lead them, leading, caring, training, maintaining, right? So that's a old military principle. But that's really what they need is, leading, caring, training, maintaining. And, that whole, Mike, that you were talking about earlier, how do you were talking about with Jordan Peterson, how do we fill that hole? What's the answer to bridging that gap, or putting a bridge over this obstacle so that young men can enter into the kingdom, enter into manhood in a way that's
the biggest.
You know what I'm saying?
I absolutely do, and I've thought about this, and Paul, please, weigh in as well. But in my opinion, the real problem that I see is compromise, and I think you have to be, as a man. I think the biggest thing you're looking for as a youth, looking at a man, is he compromised? Is he, he should just be. When you go and ask him a question, he's got an answer. I mean, he understands right and wrong in almost every situation. You could go up to him and say, "Excuse me, sir, this is my situation. What's the right thing to do here?" And he don't even have to think about it. It's uncompromising. He knows what is right and wrong, and there's things that he does not bend on.
Yeah,
and I think that's what I've always looked for in a strong male role model when I was growing up.
absolutely. I have. It may sound like a broken record. I think I've said this a few times before, but it's worth saying again. It's chivalry. And the expression that chivalry is not dead. It shouldn't be. It's working on it. But chivalry is strength and gentleness.
Yeah.
It's strength and gentleness. So it's like, I can stomp somebody down in the ground, but I can also scoop up an infant and handle it with care, like eggs. you know,
So,
and
so
I can
yeah, so
turn
that's
it back on and turn it back off, open up a door for a lady,
yeah,
and then I can, if I had to, make someone's head a calzone if the situation presented itself. And that's the idea. That's what a knight was,
Right.
the knight
yeah,
that we thought of. And that also should be a father, should be somebody like that too, is gentle with his children and his wife. And, but then, he can defend his family and, to the death. And he's ready to
yeah.
do that.
Yeah,
That's
so
the idea.
there's certain I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think there's two aspects. I mean, you don't want to be that dude that's just always kicking tail, completely out of control, freaking wild man. I mean, there's nothing manly about that. Yeah. And the other point
That is a true toxic man.
that's I hate the term, but that would be a good example of toxic masculinity.
It's a terrible expression.
But the other flip of that is what I think we see a lot more of than toxic masculinity is the soft guy, the dude that just, he just goes for everything. He just doesn't want to irritate anybody. And, he's just so gentle and, please don't put guns around because it terrifies him. And if there's a problem, just call 911 because they should take care of it. And that's not a man. Okay. And that's what you see a lot of that guy, today. So can we get both sides here? I mean, that's what we need to get. We need to get the warrior. I think Jordan Peterson said that real men are dangerous. He's absolutely correct.
Or he could be a monster. Yeah, a monster.
Real men are monsters. Real men are dangerous. Yeah. Okay, they're gentle. They can hold the baby. They can comfort somebody in need. But if you cross them, it's going to be a bad day.
Yeah, and that's
so his comment. Yeah. His comment was, "Be a monster and learn how to control it."
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's having that courage, but knowing when to press the button.
It's this is a little bit of a tangent, but I've seen guys that can do that downrange, but they can't do it at home. That's right. They will die defending our country, but they won't spend a minute in prayer for their family.
Mm.
You know what I mean? They won't stand up for their family, but they'll die for their brothers in arms. It just doesn't make any sense. I've seen it so many times, perhaps you have too, but they should be the same guy.
It should be. Yeah.
It should be the same guy at home, same guy at work. And, obviously there is a little bit of locker room banter. I got it, but because we need that camaraderie with the guys, like a men's Bible study type of thing. But the idea is, so many guys are like that. They should be, and that's one of the issues is their children aren't seeing that. Even the warriors their children aren't seeing that. I don't know if you've, realized that or seen that there, Rodney.
No, 100%. It's interesting just, to be in a public situation, a public scenario, and to see how, I'm one of those guys that I don't want to say my head's always on a swivel, but I'm always observing and watching and cognizant of, the things that are going on around me. And sometimes, you witness things like what you guys were talking about is, you got this guy who's, it's not that he's de-escalating the situation, it's that he's running from the situation. It's, sometimes I think there's a time and a place that you need to stand up and you need to be a man, when you've got, 3 young teenage boys with gang colors, whatever, fill in the blanks. They're lost. They need guidance. They didn't get it. They are where they are, but they're catcalling to your daughter and 13-year-old boy, whatever. And so yeah, I think that we definitely there needs to be a step up for sure. And I think men need to be comfortable to be men again. Wow. But here's the question, guys. I mean, how do you get there? So so we see this this gap that obviously that I think everybody would agree there's a gap there. How do you fill that gap? I mean, what does that entail, and what does that look like? What's step one? Maybe might be a question.
Well, you're not going to get in the public schools, and you're not going to hear this from the government.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and I think that's, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of policy type changes that we can make in this country. Obviously, we don't need government being dad. Government's been doing that now for I don't know 50 years or whatever. That experiment, I think anybody would have to admit, is a complete failure. Okay, government doesn't make a very good dad. So we need to quit. I mean, I understand the women's lib thing, and I got it. I mean, they feel empowered, but are you? I think you're being sold a bad set of goods.
My goodness, what woman would want to stoop to the level to become a man?
Well, it's
just joking. Yeah.
Well, I mean, listen. There's a lot of these women that have, you don't need a man. You can get a welfare check. You can get this. You can get that. Listen, government will take care of you. The government will be the man of the house. Is that really doing them any good?
Mike, it's funny you should mention that, because in 1965, we don't remember this happening, but we can see the effects of it. Lyndon Johnson rolled out a program that's called the Great Society, and listen, there were some good things that came from that policy. There really were, but one of the things that was the underlying destructive mechanism of that is, in the Great Society, you could receive a welfare check, but you had to be unmarried. There couldn't be a father in the house. So going to what you were saying, which is, the government's track record with fathering our children. I mean, that's pretty much where it started. Was about the early to mid 1960s. Is things were shifting, and with those particular policies, once again, some of which were good policies, and I think had some merit. But one of the things about, like, the welfare situation and public assistance is, if it was a fatherless home, you got more.
Yeah, incentives.
So, right?
Yeah, they have incentivized, out of wedlock pregnancy.
Yeah. I think what we need is an old-fashioned agoge.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I was saying, other than, I think some policy changes, and I'm not saying that we stop feeding, kids that need to eat and don't have a father in the house. Okay, I'm not saying that at all. But I think that all needs to be at the state level. Certainly, for anybody who's got familiarity with the Constitution, that was never delegated to the federal level. Okay, that can stay at the community level, where it's a lot more. There's a lot better good. Okay, when you start getting up to the federal level, all you're doing is just paying a whole bunch of people in the swamp to, they're going to take listen, if your neighbor needs a sandwich, you don't need to ask Washington, D.C. to bring the bologna and the bread, okay? You can just walk next door and have the dude a sandwich, all right? We're trying to do way too much silly crap up in D.C., and it's not doing anything for us. So besides the policy stuff, we really need to do some things at the local level. And you were talking about the agoge. So first of all, what is, some people not familiar with that. What is that? What is that, Rodney?
So the agoge, the famous agoge, was what the Spartans would do. So their kids in Sparta, at about 6 or 7 years old, they would enter into what would be called or referred to as an agoge, which is a training. I'm not sure exactly. I think it's a leading is the definition of agoge. So the meaning is a leading. So it was basically a 10 to 15 year process where parents would basically, their kids would go to this agoge and they would learn everything. I mean, they would move completely out of the home. They would be part of this, this culture of training a young man to become a man, or to become ultimately a Spartan. And so it was, but it was everything. I mean, it was academic. It was, learning how to fight, learning how to write, learning how to read, sing. It encompassed logic, rhetoric, philosophy. I mean, just all kinds of things. So as this young man became an adolescent, he's growing continuously, and then eventually he would, quote unquote, graduate from the Agoge at about the age of, say, 20 to early 20s, and then he would move from one class to the next. But it was known that that all those young men, they had strength, courage, aptitude, endurance. They were refined. They were ready for manhood, so to speak.
Spartan citizenship as a man.
Yeah, pretty much. So the Greeks got something right.
Yeah.
So
in my opinion, yeah.
So
yeah.
it's time in our country for an American Agoge.
I think about that often, and I know you and I have talked about this, Mike, over lunch before. Just the heart that I think that all three of us have for young men, and the fact that there is a gap that needs to be bridged, and what would that look like? I mean, I would love to see something here in this climate, in this culture, that basically would minister. I'm going to use the word minister to those young men, that where there is a gap, or like we were talking about in the beginning, these fatherless homes where there's young men that have no example, they have nobody to imitate or emulate, and they're lost. I mean, they're truly lost, trying to figure out who they are, who am I? And what what is a man look like? So
and today with the internet and social media, the message that a lot of these young boys are getting has got nothing to do with the types of things that were being taught in ancient Sparta.
Oh, yeah.
Right, purple hair, ponytails. Dressing up like an animal and using a kitty litter box. I mean, just craziness.
Yeah. Hey, I want to jump in there too. Something I wanted to piggyback on earlier is one of the more important lessons I learned as a father, and I have two grown daughters, and I'm a grandfather. Is that you set one of the things you do is you set the climate in the home. The spiritual climate, the emotional climate. You're the thermostat in the home. That's one of the things you do. So if you are, out of your mind, that family is going to lose it. I know. If you come home and you've had a bad day and you keep that bad day and it leaves, the bad day doesn't stay in the truck, then the family is going to suffer. Then the wife yells at the kids and the kids kick the dog, that type of thing.
Yeah.
It's
Everything goes downhill.
So that's one thing is, knowing that, right? God gave us broader shoulders to carry this weight. It's okay. He did that for a reason. And then the other one is when it comes to masculinity, biblical masculinity, being a real man, right? Being the gender of maleness, okay? One of those things is biblical masculinity expresses itself not in a demand to be served, but
as a servant. I mean,
it's not the demand to be served, but the willingness to serve others, the willingness and the humility to say, okay, you're not. Of course, you could say to your kids, you're not going to talk to your mom like that, and you're going to take care of that. But then there's also the sense that even if it's not appreciated, you're still doing it, even when it's not appreciated. And I think that it says a lot these days is the world and our culture does not appreciate a real man and a father that has biblical masculinity, and they're just gonna, trash talk that. And but that's what we're called to do, and we will see the dividends of that. You'll see it.
Well, I think you brought up a real important point that I have to constantly remind myself of as well, which is, I'm not in it for the praise.
Yeah.
and there's hard, it's hard. There's like tough things, and sometimes you don't feel appreciated, and that's okay. You have a role and a responsibility in your own family, and there's not going to be somebody blowing you up or praising you or making you feel great every day. I mean, just get after what you got to do, right?
Yeah, the idea. Just chime in here too, Rodney. I don't want to cut you off, but you're the guest here on the show. So, the idea is the reason your motivation for doing it is not praise. Right. It's you're protecting your family, you're providing for your family. You're doing everything you can because you were given that family. If a man who finds a wife finds favor and is blessed. Right, he receives favor from the Lord, and if he's doubly blessed, he has children, right? And that's really just the whole point. Is the reward itself is your serving.
Yeah, and I think so. Seeing it through a clear lens, an untainted lens, so to speak. Children are a gift, not a burden.
Yeah.
So if there's any guys out there listening, and you feel like your kids are a burden, brother, they're a gift. 110%. And so look at it as a gift, unwrap the gift, enjoy the gift. And then, the responsibilities that come along with that. Hey, it's huge and it's monumental, but it's so rewarding. Yeah. And I think, Paul, I've heard you before say like there's 3 R's.
Yeah. I was hoping somebody would mention that, not so that I can jump up on the lectern here and start preaching, but so I did, just caveat, just full disclosure, I did preach this on Father's Day, so this is fresh in my mind.
Oh, good for you. Yeah.
But on Father's Day, I preached on Psalm 78 and verses, 4 and 5. And but in Psalm 78, and I'll read that to you. See if I can get here. 3 and 4, Psalm 78, verses 3 and 4. That which we have heard and known, and our fathers have told us, we will not hide them from their children, telling to the generation to come the praises of the Lord and his strength and his wonderful works that he has done. And so something I brought out in that is, just quickly, 3 R's, the role of fathers, the responsibility of fathers, and the reward of fathers. And so the role was really in this verse, these 2 verses I just read, and that is you're primarily the chief instructor in the home. So these young men, these young women, they're going to grow up with godly values. Well, if they don't have them, it's because you didn't take the time to do it. It just really is. It's it. Your wife. She comes alongside you. She's your helpmate. She's God created the wife to be compatible to Adam, and so that she comes alongside and she's his helper. The 2 of them, they get the job done. But that's really the role. It's you can't abdicate that responsibility, that role, to anybody else. And look, I've already jumped into the other R there, but the second R is the responsibility. Is they say in the Army you can delegate authority but never responsibility, and that's certainly true with being a father. You're responsible, and that begins with even before conception, all those things. All the way to the end. Even as a grandfather, I have my grown daughters. I'm still a father, and it's awesome as they still honor me. I like that, because that doesn't stop either, honoring your parents, your father and your mother. But with the responsibilities, we nurture those children, we discipline those children, and we can't just slough that off to somebody else. So what that means is, in the days of daycare, in the days of school, and look, this is tough for maybe a lot of guys listening with your lifestyle on the team. Your lifestyle in the Army, or whatever it is, you're a businessman. The idea is you got to make time. You have to make time. There's a study that's done that, I don't remember exactly what the metrics, but most kids, they get like a couple of minutes with their dad, and then they spend hours in front of the TV.
Yep.
And so you only get a few minutes. Make them count. And then find time. Make time, make margin. Create and that's another thing we do with our time is we just cram all these activities in one day. We don't make time for prayer or reading our Bible or our time with our wife or our kids. And we should have priorities that probably reflect what I just said.
Paul, let me jump in there.
Yeah,
So
come on.
part of that is, be a creative dad is what I would say. Make those memories, even if it's just, making a a tent fort in your living room with chairs and blankets, or camp out in the backyard, or roast marshmallows. Because listen, a child finds love in time.
Yeah.
And you hit the nail on the head. I mean, so spending time with your kids and for your kids to have memories. I mean, it's so we love to laugh and joke about some of the things that we did, when our kids were young, and they remember that stuff. I mean, it's life changing.
Yeah, and
for sure. So be creative. Be a creative dad.
Awesome, man. And so something that this is all already starting to sound like a sermon, but I also mention every Father's Day, I always use the same illustration. Nobody's called me on it yet, but I'm happy to say that. But I always bring up Eli. Eli was a judge of Israel. You remember his tenure. Samuel was called. When the Lord called him in the tabernacle, and he said, "Here I am." The good thing Eli did was he said, "Hey, go listen to what the Lord's going to tell you." But one thing that Eli did bad was his sons were flunkies. Hophni and Phinehas he allowed these guys to be priests, and then they slept with women in the tabernacle, and they were just wastes of space, just world-class flunkies. And he did not discipline his sons. He he lightly chastened them, but he just let them go on, and they sinned against the Lord. They sinned against Israel. Eventually, they got hacked up in front of the Ark of the Covenant because they were using the Ark like a talisman, like a lucky rabbit's foot. And, God just had enough of them and took them away. And the whole point is, if you don't discipline your children, you can always just visit them later in the cemetery or visit them later in prison.
That's true.
So, I mean, it's and then, okay, so that's the downer, or that's a Debbie Downer there, but the reward of being a father is amazing. The joy. And so it goes there too, is verse 7, we declared our children God's ways so that they may set their hope in God. That's Psalm 78, verse 7, and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments. So we teach our children God's ways so that they will set their hope in God, right? So they'll have faith. That's ultimately our goal as fathers, is to lead them to Christ. That's what we want. And so the reward is knowing that they're there, knowing that they finally have faith. And then, I always like to mention this too, is we can't lead anyone anywhere that we've not already been ourselves. Mm-hmm. So I can't lead it to a person I don't know. That's the whole idea. So that's really the big thing about being a father, is there's so many things that we do and we're responsible for it, but the payout when your child comes to faith in Christ is incredible. And it's worth all of the pain. It's worth, and your labor is not in vain at that point. So you can celebrate, friend, when it happens. So just, you keep your hand on the plow and you just keep going, because the reward is definitely worth it.
Oh, totally. It's when you see your kids, you see them go from diapers to, being grown men and women. And once again, both my kids have birthdays in the month of July, and they'll be 26 and 31. And what's so satisfying and rewarding, to use, the third R, is to see them acting out the things that you did and said and didn't realize they were getting it.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's just wonderful to watch. I mean, you see them, you hear them say things, or you catch little phrases, and you're like, yeah, that's a me-ism. That's one of the things I used to say. and it's just so train up as a child, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I
and
always
I think
like
that's
that
the
as,
key.
yeah, sorry. I always like that as a team sergeant or, when your guys start talking like you. I think that's a good sign. But moreover, when your kids
Yeah.
are picking up the good stuff from you, that's great.
Oh, totally,
Yeah.
totally, totally.
Little
Yeah,
return on investment there.
Yes, there is. That's all worth
absolutely.
it. But
So,
yeah, I
so
mean, yeah,
yeah. So back to filling the gap. Let's talk
yeah,
about that a little bit. Yeah, and let's just touch on that. I mean, so one of the things I know, the three of us have kind of talked about, outside of, the broadcast, outside of the podcast, is, you how do you bridge that gap? And you know, one of the things I know to be true, and I know this based on personal experience. I mean, having been in the military, and you know, I'm an Army Ranger as well. Drill instructor, so I know the name, explain, demonstrate, conduct practical work. I know how to do all those things. There are a lot of guys like me and like you, um, that are out there that have a special skill set and could pass on this, this knowledge, these beliefs, values, morals, and ethics to these young men who need it. And I think, I know that's a burn in my heart. And I hear you guys. It seems you have the the same burden on you as well. And so, thinking about how could, thinking about a Gogi, thinking about, bridging that gap, and how could, there's so many men out here that do have time and do have skills, talents, and abilities that they could pass on to another generation to train up a a young man to teach them some of those basic things, to teach them how to be a man, to spend time with them, and in doing so, foster a relationship that that they can draw back on
Yeah,
as they mature and come to age. Yeah.
yeah, and I think and of course, there's countless folks out there that are doing just that all across the country. But I think what we would like to do is really do everything that we can to at least highlight it, celebrate it, uh, demonstrate it to everybody, duplicate it, right?
Mm.
Franchise it, whatever you want to. There's a lot of great programs and great things that are happening out there, and I think one of the things that of course we've been talking about, and I think we're just gonna we're just gonna dive in and start doing it, but we really want to just give this thing some energy. We want to give it some cohesion. We want to let the right hand see what the left hand's doing, and help each other in this crusade, if you will, this very worthy cause that has come to time. It's time to do this.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think the one thing I would say is if you're a man out there and you've got a special skill set, and um, you feel a burden or a passion to pass some of that stuff on to a young man, I guarantee you there's somebody within your community that needs it.
Oh,
I don't think
absolutely.
this is unique. It's not unique to any geographic area. I think it's throughout the country, and I think that there's a lot of kids out there that really could use a male role model in their life. I mean, Paul, the statistics you gave earlier, I mean, my goodness, one out of two is missing something in their life, and
yeah,
you know, bringing a child along, or a small young man, bringing him along into adulthood. I mean, man, there could be nothing, nothing more satisfying and more gratifying than that.
Let me let me ask you a
And
question
I think
now. Are
yeah.
the churches doing enough in this arena? Is this really where the churches really ought to be putting more energy nationwide, worldwide?
Yes, yes, yes,
I think
absolutely.
that's the challenge. I think that's the
yeah,
challenge. If you're a congregant, right? If you're a part of a congregation in some church, someplace, and your church isn't Doesn't, I know in Paul's church, they got the Christian Rangers, they got the
Daughters of
the
Virtue.
Daughters of Virtue, right? And of course they get together when there's, appropriate. But I know Paul's church is doing this, and I think if you belong to a church and you're out there and you guys don't have some sort of youth program that's going beyond, if you will, your congregation. I mean, really trying to get out there and kind of find those at-risk youth and bring them into that fold. I would challenge you that's where your attention really needs to be, right? I mean, the Messiah certainly was interested in children.
Yeah.
Well, 100%. Yeah, and absolutely. And there's so many verses of scripture that point back to, from childlike faith to, to the little ones. I mean, obviously, God has a heart for children, 100%. So, there's three things that we have as men. We have time, we have talent, we have treasure. And I think that, we have all three of those to give. And, I know it's a busy world out there, and there's so much going on, but slow it down. That is what I would say. Just slow it down. Reach out, find somebody who needs encouragement or who needs direction, instruction, and reach out. Get involved, and it can be as much or as little as as you can give, but you can give something. And that's what I would say is, give of your time first, give of your talent, and then, give of your treasure, and try to figure out a way to make a change, make a difference in young men's lives. Because it's for sure. I mean, everything that we've talked about is, points back to that there is a huge gap that needs to be bridged. And we need to be, hey, listen, as men, we need to be obstacle removers. So we need to figure out a way to bridge that gap. And to make it easy for these young men to come into adulthood as a strong, confident, courageous, competent, honest young man.
Mm. We all heard when we served in the military that if you want to be high speed, master the basics. Is it time for America to get small again, to start mastering the basics, to get back to just family, your kids, don't worry about AI and electric cars and all the nonsense and what you have in the big house. Isn't it time just to really just return to the basics again and start engaging in those things that made this country the greatest country that ever graced the face of the earth?
Yeah, and I wanted to just jump in there as we're kind of winding this thing down. One of my favorite quotes from Thomas Paine, right? As you know, Thomas Paine wrote Common Sense. He was instrumental in, getting the dander up, as they say, with the colonies, and kind of, get our thinking caps on and figure out where this whole thing was going. But anyway, he says, I think this is appropriate. Those who expect to reap the blessings of freedom must, like men, undergo the fatigue of supporting it. And I think that's appropriate. We got to work hard. If we don't work hard, then we'll just lose all our blessings. We'll lose all our freedom. And this is our watch.
Yeah.
So it's time for us to, pony up. The guys that aren't, woke and drinking lattes and having beards and skinny jeans and all those other weirdo things.
The beard is weird.
That other beard's kind of weird. I mean, I got a beard, but I also drink lattes, but you know where I'm going here.
Yeah, right.
And what do you got to get skinny jeans?
Yeah, no skinny jeans here. But
I know what you're saying. Yeah, 100%.
That's the idea. Is this is our watch. We got to care. What we can lose is everything if we just sit around and stick our heads in the sand.
No, absolutely. I think we're called and accountable, right? So I think that's the thing is that, we got to. I think it's way past time for folks to step up and let our voices be heard in a way that's it brings value. It's a value proposition. you're planting the seed and you're nurturing, that next generation to be a great generation, so that they can reach their full potential. Yeah.
Yeah, it can be better than
I think
ours. Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Right on. Well, Rodney, thanks for coming on the podcast again, my friend. You've been throwing some gems our way. A lot of experience you have, and I'm happy that you've been sharing it. So, guys out there, also, maybe it would be good, also, just Rodney, for you to pray again for those guys like us that are trying to do the right thing, and they're just getting beat up from the world, and they're trying to be good fathers, and so maybe we all need prayer about that. So, if you would, sir.
Yeah, take us out.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Father, we just come to you. We praise you. We thank you for your grace, for your mercy. Thank you for the unchanging word, the gift of salvation, the Holy Spirit that leads us. And Lord, I want to thank you for the men that have the desire, the vision, and the courage to speak up boldly and to live out your plan, your purpose as a living example for young men and young women in Christ. We just pray to you, Lord. We thank you. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, my friend.
All right, thanks, Rodney.
Yes, sir. Thanks, guys. Hope y'all have a great day.
All right, you too.
Thanks.
All right, well, that concludes our time together today. And if you're interested in helping develop our country's next generation of warriors, consider the American Agoge Project. You can learn more about it through this podcast platform at podbean.com. Until our next meeting, remember to keep your head on a swivel and stay mentally and tactically smart, physically and spiritually strong, and socially astute. To each other, we pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. God bless Pine.